schedule. And we are recording this, so we'll be sending it out to everyone who joins. And then if anyone registered wasn't able to join, they'll still get that recording. And I would like to just start us off with prayer. And then I will briefly just introduce Dr. Greg and let him take it from there. And I'm going to start with recently, St. Teresa of Avila has been my girl. So I'm going to start with a prayer that she composed in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things are passing away. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing. God alone suffices. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. That's one of my favorite mental health prayers. So I thought it would be fitting. So Dr. Rick Bottaro, I'm just going to read a little bio and then he can take over. He is a Catholic psychologist, the director of Catholic Psych Institute and the Catholic Psych Academy, developed the Catholic Mindfulness online course. Before getting his doctorate, he spent 4 years living as a Franciscan friar, serving the poor in the tradition of St. Francis. He ultimately discerned a call to pursue married life, family life. 6 years after leaving New York City as a friar, Dr. Bottaro returned as a psychologist, and his aim is fundamentally the same: to serve. Instead of serving those suffering material poverty, he now seeks to serve those with psychological needs. He is a 2003 Franciscan alum, and I just also discovered co-founder of Servants of the Savior.
Yes, that's right.
Wow, not some small feat. They still are doing well, alive and well on campus today. So very, very exciting. And then I also saw, were you at Franciscan, was it a dual degree, philosophy and psychology, or?
I think that's what I ended up with. It's been almost 20 years now. It's a little bit foggy, but yeah, I think I ended up with mental health, but I was in the dual degree program.
Awesome. Piqued my interest. I was a philosophy degree as well. So I was like,
yeah, I had a lot of philosophy, good background there.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Greg. And I'll let you take the floor and then we'll open it up for question and answers after.
Yeah, sure thing. So just really am so honored and happy to be here with you guys. I was out on campus a few weeks ago, or I guess months now at this point, but I got to see Christy, get to see you again, and a bunch of people here in the room too. And really excited to just reconnect after so long. I've been back on campus a couple of times over the years, but just really feeling called to give back here. So I hope whatever I can offer right now, for the alumni that are present, this is only scratching the surface. I have a podcast called the Being Human podcast, which is free. So just to tell you that, I'm going to open up a couple of ideas here, but we really unpack a lot of this stuff in our podcast. My story has been, I've taken some twists and turns. I was a Franciscan. I studied under Father Benedict Rochelle, and he gave me a lot of my spiritual development and training as a Franciscan, and helped me to really uncover a lot of the wounds that were sort of buried in my subconscious. So I was a joyful friar, and I had a great time, and it was a beautiful vocation, but it was the healing that I experienced in deeper prayer and in deeper spiritual development that led me to discover my true vocation. And so I ended up leaving the friars when I was still in temporary vows. And then I still wanted to just serve people and integrate our faith with mental health and psychology, as Father Benedict did and taught me how to do. And so that's really my whole mission of life. And so for the last really 20 years, I've continued that same trajectory in the friars, out of the friars, built the practice. We have the Catholic Psych Institute, actually just launched a whole certification program, almost a master's program of bringing together the psychology that's relevant to a true understanding of the human person with the Catholic faith and philosophy and spirituality. So we bring those three threads together and train people how to actually accompany others who are suffering mental health burdens, and in a way that we really understand the blueprint of the human person, how God made us. That's missing. And I was like, what can I talk to you guys about for 20 minutes? There's so many different ways we can go with this, but the fundamental truth is there actually is no standard of mental health anywhere. Like, this is a really bold statement. I want you to think about it and realize that this is actually the state of affairs that we're in right now. There's no standard. So if you have a heart problem, if you have a foot problem, if you get a cancer diagnosis, like you go to a doctor and they know, like they're going to run tests and they have numbers and they measure it up to a standard. And then you're either healthy or sick based on the standard. And then they have treatment plans based on the standards. There is literally no standard of mental health. Like this is actually like really astounding if you think about it. All of the mental health system, the field of psychology, the training programs, even the educational degrees that are out there for mental health, for graduate programs, for all these different things, they're not grounded on any standard. So we're in a world right now that things are getting insane, literally, and we're calling good evil and we're calling evil good, as was prophesied would happen. And then we're looking for the field to be able to make sense of all this stuff. I just want to say, like, if you get nothing else from me, please hear this and think about this. Don't look for reason and anything that makes sense to come from the field of mental health. There is no standard. So there's a reason why the chaos is happening right now. There's a reason why you can't find a good therapist. And then if you find a good therapist, like what system are they using? They're not really sure. They maybe found something. You have some really amazing, inspired Catholic therapists out there that are doing incredible work, but it's not because of the program they went to. It's not, and even the programs, you have Steubenville has an amazing graduate counseling program. They're doing the best they can with the very broken field that they're being handed to say, here's what the state is requiring. Here's what the field is requiring. And then when you're there, thank God we have prayer and sacraments and support and community. And so amazing, beautiful things that nurture true development, but it's not based on the standards that are part of the, ACA, that's another organization, the APA. These things are totally broken and all over the place. So number one, there's no standard of mental health. Number two, that's one thing that we're at the Catholic Psych Institute actually building and trying to create. And there's a lot of other amazing people out there. Matt Bruninger at Steubenville is doing an amazing job. Greg Popchak is out there, and the whole department. I had Dr. Regina Borio when I was an undergrad, and I got to reconnect with her a couple months ago. I mean, they're just doing amazing things. And like little bits and pieces of contributions are coming out to help. But there as of yet is not an actual standard of mental health, never mind Catholic mental health. So this is our project. This is what we're doing. Check out the Being Human podcast if you want to hear more about what we're doing. You can go to catholicpsych.com. There's lots of stuff out there. But so here's a couple of cool key things that you can kind of sit with and maybe take from this as well. And I want to definitely, I know we're going to have some question and answer time afterwards, right? So I want to field whatever questions you guys have. First of all, I love that prayer. Annie, thank you so much for starting with that prayer. I mean, I don't know if you did that intentionally or not, but we use Teresa of Avila everywhere, and that prayer in particular, because what I developed in Catholic mindfulness has, there's a little bit of contention around it when we first launched it. And some of those threads, unfortunately, came from louder platforms that have stuck around a little bit. So people think like, oh, Catholic mindfulness, is that new agey? Is it Buddhist? All this other stuff. But really, I was just using the language of the culture to meet the culture where they are, to bring them to something much deeper. And that's ultimately where we're going with Saint Teresa of Avila. So she says, let nothing disturb you. And she has this idea of God's providence and his enduring, pervasive presence. And that no matter what, we'll always know that all will be well, that he alone never changes. These are ideas. These are spiritual ideas. And it's easy to intellectually connect with an idea. And then we think and hear about that idea intellectually, because our spiritual nature and our intellectual part of our body and our personhood is real. We are spiritual. And so we have an ability to abstract and connect with abstract ideas. And you hear that idea and you read those words on the page in that present moment that you're reading those words, and you listen to it and you're like, yes, this is everything. This is life. Like, this is true. This is good. This is beautiful. I read the words and it resounds, and my heart is echoing with this truth. And then you put that prayer down, and then you go eat lunch, and then you're with your friends or your kids or your neighbor or nobody. And then what happens? Your frustration, your anxiety, your short-temperedness, your fears, your narratives in your mind telling you that you're not good enough. Like, what were you thinking? Of course, you're going to still be afraid and nervous about things. Or what were you thinking? You have so much on your plate. Why did you even waste the time to read that? You think prayer is useful. Of course it is. But now what? It's like, what actually happens in your brain afterwards? The fact of the matter is, we are not just spiritual. See, the human person is actually an integration of body and spirit. Everybody's like, yes, we know that. Good. We're not Cartesians. We are not dualists. We get it. Okay, but what does that actually mean? What that actually means is, well, let me talk about it in the opposite. If we were angels, totally and only spiritual beings, we would abstract an idea, which is a spiritual reality, and it would immediately change us. But we're not angels. We are humans with bodies and spirits. And so it's not just the idea that can change us. It has to be implemented in and integrated in our bodies. So in my particular expertise, I look at a very specific part of the body called the brain. And in the brain, we have neurological dimensions, and we have hormones, and there's biochemical things that are happening and pathways. So there's a reason why you can read a beautiful prayer, but then it's not actually effective in your life, because you're not an angel. And if you don't put into practice things that can change your brain, then no matter what you're doing to change your spiritual life or to change your mind is going to be ineffective. And that's why it can feel like you're banging against the same doors, confessing the same sins, struggling with the same burdens over and over and over and over again. Because even though we're not Cartesian dualists, we've drunk the Kool-Aid of a dualistic culture. And we've implicitly believed the lie that all that matters is what we say and believe and what is true spiritually for us or intellectually for us. And we're just completely ignoring our bodily reality. We cannot continue to ignore our bodily reality if we actually want to grow and change and feel the peace that Christ has promised us. So this is what Catholic mindfulness is actually all about. So if you've heard about it before, if you have questions about it, I mean, you can get, there's books, The Mindful Catholic, which is a book that I wrote that's available everywhere. And it's on our podcast and it's on our website and whatever else. We have all sorts of free resources all about it. And I'm trying to get this out to people because the ultimate sort of culmination of Catholic mindfulness is ultimately a way to understand how we are not yet fully receiving the mercy of God and how we are not yet actually fully living in love. And so I hope, if that sounds Buddhist to anybody, let me know. But the fact of the matter is that God has infinite mercy and compassion for us. And he wants us to take that in, all of us, in our body and spirit. But because we've over-spiritualized our human reality and experience, we are missing actual compassion and love and mercy from God. The only way to actually receive the mercy that he has for us is through our humanity. He entered into our humanity, taking on flesh, so that he could give us his love and meet us where we are in our humanity. That means not as angels, but as body and spirit. So this whole program, this whole idea of integration is bringing together the psychological realities of what's happening in the brain, what's happening with our hormone systems, what's happening, understanding the anxiety response. Why do we start ruminating and fearing what's going to happen later, or the negative narratives that are in our brains that we end up ruminating over in our minds? All those things are happening as a result of an interaction between our spirit and our body. So the only way to actually bring healing is through an integration of our spirit and our body. The spirit matters, which is why the whole field of psychology and its secular moral relativism is completely off base, and they're not going to come up with the best answers. But also the body matters. Biology matters, which is why you don't just need to go to confession and just need to have a spiritual director and just need to pray more to actually feel better about yourself in your life. And it's never been one, either or. And the whole history of the church, if you go back to the Desert Fathers, they're like intensely psychological, even though they don't have the language to call it that. But they're talking about the things that we talk about. In fact, I just had a nun from a Byzantine rite on my podcast, Mother Natalia, and she's from Christ the Bridegroom Monastery. Beautiful, beautiful order. And I knew her when she was a sister before she made her full, I forgot what she called them, but promises or full vows, or the final vow version of the Byzantine rite. And and she gives me so much. She teaches me a lot about the Eastern Desert Fathers and all the things that she's like, you didn't create something new here. I'm like, oh, sister, are these, this program on EWTN was like blasting my new program. She's like, your program's not new. And she's like, forget what they say. They haven't read Evagrius and they haven't read the Philokalia and like all this. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me go read some of that stuff. I'm like, holy cow, these guys are saying the same thing. Like, this is the whole point. This is what I've been trying to say. And the East, they haven't suffered Cartesian dualism the way we have in the West. So they don't really need the program that I've created. And they also don't have the aversion to it either. They just live it. But we in the West, especially, need to heal the rift that's been created between our spirit and our body. And so this is just one of the fruits of a truly Catholic anthropology and a blueprint of the human person. So I've been following the inspiration from the first time I heard him say it in 1997 at World Youth Day in Paris, when St. John Paul II called us to be not afraid, to go out into the streets. And then he repeated his call and need for an adequate anthropology to really understand and meet people and give them what they're thirsty for. And so that's all we're trying to do, is just we're writing out the adequate anthropology. He gave us everything to work with in his personalism and his philosophy. Everybody's familiar with theology of the body. That's a fruit of all of that as well. And so now we're taking that deeper into the psychology and the way that people operate so that we can actually help people feel better about their lives. So there's lots of other directions we can go in. I would love to hear more about, what you guys look for, what you're wondering about, any other questions that you have anywhere in the space of mental health, how it integrates with the faith, anything else you think I could be able to help you with.
Wow. Just wow, honestly. Thank you so much, Dr. Greg. Went on a Pustinia with Mother Natalia that like changed my life. So
oh, sweet. Oh, that's
yeah.
awesome.
So you're like saying all the things and I'm like, oh yeah, I get you. She's so funny. And personalism, my other favorite word. So like this is just the music to my ears.
Oh,
Any questions from anyone while we're waiting though? Just off the top of my head, what would you say if someone was like walking away from this today? Is something in like they could perhaps add to their daily routine that would be beneficial for their mental health?
Yeah. So, this is a sort of a sneaky trick, but I play this on myself all the time. And so we have in our pride, which comes from a self-protective part of us, which is really good. But it manifests as pride, which is obviously very bad. We lie to ourselves. And the sneakiest part about it is that we don't know that we're lying to ourselves. So in a spirit of compassion and mercy and self-love, reflecting and taking our lead from Jesus, who loves us, and saying, okay, God, if you love me, I can love me too. In that spirit, say to myself, how am I lying to myself today? What am I missing? What am I feeling, thinking, or assuming about other people or about myself that has some lie in it? And so instead of going through thinking like, oh, I got it all, I'm good, I'm right, I'm true, like I know what's best, I have all the answers, until every once in a while, maybe I'll accept the fact that maybe I missed something. Let's start from the other side. Let's assume that we're getting something wrong in a spirit of self-compassion and look for it. I was just talking to Mother Natalia about this. It was like, how do we misjudge people? It's like all these things that we can have these judgments about. And we've read this and we've heard this again in the spiritual maxims that we read. It's like, You never know the burdens that somebody else is carrying that are secret to everybody else, or what it would be like to actually walk in their shoes and all these things. If you really knew, you'd feel totally different about that nastiness you just judged them as having. It's like if somebody is like, maybe somebody is blocking 98 judgmental thoughts or judgmental words or nasty words, and you see them offer one nasty word to somebody and they're like, that person's so nasty. It's like they just got through the most heroic battle of their life, blocking 98 other things that they could have said, and you don't know that. And maybe they're better at blocking nastiness than you are. But because you saw that one thing, that's how you judge them. So it's always like, what else could I be missing here? How might I be lying to myself? How can I understand myself better instead of assuming I already have all the answers?
Thank you. That was great. We have a question here from the Q&A chat. What is the most current Catholic and or Steubenville perspective on, I've never heard of this, so Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor's Whole Brain Living or My Stroke of Insight? It looks like maybe they're books she wrote.
I wish I knew what that was, but I haven't heard of her either. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
All right, we have another one. So we have more questions. Can you give us a working concept of mental health? We hear about mental illness all the time, but how do we arrive at mental health?
That's great. I have a working concept. Let's start with health in general. So a holistic sense of health. And this is a definition that overlaps all fields of kind of any kind of like dimension of our human experience. So this could be physical health, spiritual health, or emotional mental health. And that would center around an idea of adaptability. So to be healthy is to be flexible or adaptable. And it means having a balance of the both and of principles, which we're grounded on, and openness to context, so that we have adaptability and flexibility. And I can give you a couple examples to show how this is true. Like in the body, physical health, you'd say a healthy immune system can operate within a certain frame with certain principles, but adaptable to different situations. So your temperature might rise or fall within a spectrum, and you might get a fever because your immune system is responding to a pathogen, and then it's trying to maybe kill the pathogen by raising your temperature. So there's adaptability and flexibility within healthy human physical experience. Now, if we go outside the parameters of that principle, then we can get too much of a fever that could become really dangerous. That's unhealthy. And then also the opposite direction. So we could see here the balance between the both. Let's talk about spiritual health. Let's say that you have a principle of reverence for the Mass, really important. Okay, then you have a particular proclivity towards the tradition of the Latin Mass. Now, if you have a rigidity that develops that says the Latin Mass is the only right way to say the Mass, well, that would be an unhealthy rigidity and inflexibility or unadaptability. And we would say that that is actually unhealthy. So you can have a mindset and we can have a spirituality that says there's rooms for lots of different expressions of our faith. This is another thing we're just talking about Mother Natalia with, because when you study the Eastern rites, talk about blowing up your perception about what is actually core to our beliefs. We're talking about how in the Eastern rites, they don't actually have Eucharistic adoration. And it's a really, check out the Being Human podcast. It's not released yet. I think it's going to be maybe in 2 weeks. I forget when it's coming out on our schedule, but it's really amazing to think about this stuff. And then what we presume to be like so core to our faith, and maybe personally it is, but it doesn't mean universally it is just because it's personally. So getting to know that difference and having adaptability and flexibility. Okay, so those are the two others. Now, emotionally, for mental health, we have spectrums of flexibility. So you might have a personality where you have a proclivity towards solitude, but are you so wrapped in that proclivity that you can't be in a public situation with other people? Do you have social anxiety then? Or you might really love to be the life of the party and be around everybody, but then do you freak out if you go on a silent retreat and there's like no way you can keep yourself in your room by yourself. So a general principle, think about that, is understanding there's a both and of principles and flexibility, and that's how you get to health.
Thank you. That was great. Just on the note with the no adoration with Byzantine, going on a Pistina with that, you just have to gaze at an icon, like gaze at the face of Christ, which is what Teresa of Avila is always talking about. And there's such a complementarity there between the Eastern spirituality and Carmelite, or, Teresa of Avila's thought. So
it's cool too,
so
how
fun.
we were talking about how God is so good at giving us a cure that matches the disease. And so in the West, we struggled with, in our history, with a doubt and the true presence of the Eucharist. But the East, which is very open to and more accepting of mystery, actually never struggled with that. But they did have what's it called? Iconoclasm. It's a mouthful. So because of iconoclasm, they needed to like heal this wound that they had, where icons were seen as idols and they were held in such suspicion. So in the East, they developed this deep appreciation for icon, and even Eucharistic miracles on the West were matched by weeping images in the East. There's many more tears of icons than Eucharistic miracles in the East. And in the West, it's vice versa. So anyway, so many good things.
I know we could talk forever about this, and I know we have a hard stop at 1. We have some questions that we didn't get to. However, I just want to direct everyone to your book, Catholic Mindfulness, in your podcast, Be Human.
Being Human podcast,
which I'm excited to listen to that episode with our friend. So, but thank you so much, Dr. Greg, just for your time. For everyone who joined us, we'll be sending out this recording. Please come to our next one next month. Christy, if you want to just remind them to your podcast.
Yeah, thank you all again so much for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Greg. I know we just like tiny scratched the surface, but go, take advantage of all of his resources. So thank you for your time. And again, our office is here to serve you and to help you in whatever way. So please check out our website for regional events that we're doing, our monthly lunch and learns, and different pilgrimages that we have as well to help your body and soul have all that connection. So thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you all next month.
God bless you.
All right. Bye.